What if something you encountered at work followed you home? Not a person, not a memory, something else. Something that could travel through telephone lines, speak through machines, and scream for help in the middle of the night. My name is Michael. I'm 52 years old now, but when I was 18, I got my first job as a radio DJ at a tiny station in rural Kentucky. I worked there for 2 years. This is the story of what lived there with me. 2 things, actually. One was harmless. The other wasn't. And the night I ran from that building, the night I thought I'd escaped, I learned that some things don't need doors to follow you. They just need a phone line. The station was called WKRX, though everyone in town just called it the farm station, because that's exactly what it was. A small building sitting alone in the middle of an empty field, about 8 miles outside Harlan, Kentucky. The building itself was nothing special. Single story, maybe 1,200 square feet total. Beige aluminum siding, a gravel parking lot, and behind it, towering into the sky like a skeletal finger, was a 500-foot radio antenna that blinked red at night to warn low-flying aircraft. There were only 2 entrances. The front door, which faced the long gravel driveway that connected to Route 421, and a back door in the transmitter room that didn't even have an exterior handle. That back door was always locked from the inside, with a deadbolt. You physically could not enter through it from outside. Inside, the layout was simple. Front door opened into a tiny lobby with a receptionist desk. To the left was the sales office. To the right, a small break room with a sink, microwave, and coffee maker that was perpetually half full of burnt coffee. Straight ahead was a hallway leading to 2 studios. Studio A, which we used, and Studio B, which hadn't been used in years and was mostly storage. At the very end of the hall was the transmitter room. The transmitter room was separated from the rest of the building by thick, soundproof glass. Inside, racks of equipment hummed constantly, and there was a single light bulb, one of those old yellow industrial bulbs that burned 24/7, 365. It was never turned off, ever. That light was bright enough that you could see it from the driveway, through the front door, down the hallway, through the soundproof glass. That yellow glow was always visible. I started working there in the spring of 1994, right after my high school graduation. The pay was terrible. Minimum wage, $4.25 an hour. But I didn't care. I was on the radio. I had my own show, 5 nights a week, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. The station's format was easy listening and oldies. Nothing controversial, nothing exciting. Just comfort music for people driving home from work or making dinner. After 10 p.m., we went off the air. The station didn't have the budget for overnight programming, so at 10 o'clock, I'd flip a switch and silence would fill the airwaves until 6 a.m. when the morning show started. But just because we went off the air didn't mean my shift was over. After sign-off, I had duties. Pull commercial carts for the morning show, wash the dishes in the break room, finish any production work that hadn't been completed during the day, clean the studios. It usually took another hour or hour and a half, which meant I was almost always alone in that building until 11:30 p.m. or midnight. In a field, 8 miles from town, with nothing around but darkness and that blinking red light on the antenna. For the first few months, nothing seemed unusual. I was young, excited about the job, and too focused on not screwing up to notice anything strange. But around month 3 or 4, little things started happening. I'd see movement in my peripheral vision, just quick flashes, Shadows darting past doorways or scurrying along baseboards, always at the edge of my sight, never when I looked directly. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion. I was working 5 nights a week, taking community college classes during the day, barely sleeping. Then the lights started. Studio B, the unused studio, had overhead fluorescent lights that would flicker on and off randomly. Not because of electrical issues. The building's wiring had been redone recently. These lights would just turn on, stay on for a few minutes, then turn off. One evening, about 6 months into the job, I was sitting at the broadcast desk preparing for my shift. The evening DJ before me had just left. I was alone, organizing my music carts, when I looked up toward the front door. And I saw him. A perfect shadow, man-shaped, about 6 feet tall, standing in the hallway between the lobby and the studios. Not like a shadow cast by something, a shadow that was something. 3-dimensional, solid black. I blinked. It was gone. My heart was pounding. I sat there for a full minute, staring at the empty hallway, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. But I hadn't. The next day, I worked up the courage to talk to my boss, Linda. Linda was a chain-smoking woman in her late 50s who'd worked in radio since the 1960s. She was not a warm person, not friendly, not patient. Asking her a weird question was basically asking to be mocked. But I did it anyway. "Linda," I said, poking my head into her office, "I have a weird question." She sighed dramatically, looking up from her paperwork. "What?" "Have you ever felt like someone was here who wasn't actually here?" Before she could answer, she yelled across the building, "Donna, get in here!" Donna, the afternoon DJ, appeared in the doorway. Linda tilted her head at me. "He's seen Jimmy." Donna grinned. "Oh, yeah, Jimmy loves new people." "Who's Jimmy?" I asked. Linda lit a cigarette, even though smoking indoors was technically against policy. "Jimmy Caldwell, original owner of the station. Built this place in 1962. Ran it until he died of a heart attack in that very studio you're sitting in every night. That was '88. "He's still here," Donna added cheerfully. "Pops in all the time. Harmless. He's just checking on the station." "So you've seen him too?" "Everyone has," Linda said flatly. "He turns lights on and off, flickers Studio B. Sometimes you'll see his shadow. One time he turned on the old reel-to-reel in the production room. That thing hadn't worked in years." She stubbed out her cigarette. "He won't hurt you. He's protective of this place. Just say hi if you see him. He likes to know people respect what he built." And that was that. Ghosts were apparently just part of working at WKRX. Over the next year, I got used to Jimmy. He became routine, expected. Studio B's lights would flicker, and I'd say, "Hey, Jimmy, station's doing great. Ad revenue's up." The lights would stop flickering. One night, I heard the water faucet in the break room turn on full blast. I got up, went to check. No one there. Water running. I turned it off and said, "Jimmy, we're on a well system. Don't waste water." It didn't happen again. Once, late at night while I was doing production work, I heard my name whispered directly into my right ear. "Michael." Clear as day, like someone was standing right behind me. I jumped so hard I knocked over my coffee. But when I spun around, nothing. Empty room. "Jimmy, you scared the shit out of me," I said to the empty air. "Please don't do that again." He didn't. Jimmy was fine. Quirky, mildly unsettling, sure,
but fine. The other one, though? That was different. I never learned a name for the other presence. Nobody talked about it. Linda and Donna and the other staff, they'd happily chat about Jimmy. But when I tried to bring up the other thing I sometimes felt, they'd change the subject or look uncomfortable. Because there was another thing in that building. Something small, shin-high, maybe the size of a large cat or a small dog. And it was malevolent. I don't know how else to describe it. Jimmy felt curious, protective, benign. This thing felt hungry, angry, wrong. It was the one that would dart past me in the hallways, a shadow that moved too fast, too deliberately. It was the source of that feeling you get when you walk into a room and your skin prickles, your stomach drops, and every instinct screams at you to leave. I started to recognize when it was around. The air would feel heavier. The temperature would drop slightly. Not enough to see your breath, but enough to notice. And there'd be this smell, faint but distinct, like burnt plastic or ozone, the smell of something electrical shorting out. Jimmy appeared during the day too, apparently. Other staff had seen him in the mornings or afternoons. But the small thing? I only ever felt it at night, after everyone else left, when I was alone. It was a Tuesday in October 1995, about 18 months into my job at WKRX. The evening had started normally. I came in at 4:45 p.m., took over from Donna at 5, ran my show without incident, took calls from listeners requesting songs, read the weather and local news. Normal. At 10, I signed off, flipped the switch, silence on the airwaves. Linda and the last salesperson left around 10:15. I waved goodbye, locked the front door behind them, and settled in for my post-show duties. But the moment I heard their cars pull away, the moment I was truly alone, I felt it. The thing was there. That heavy feeling, the temperature drop, the smell of burnt plastic. Okay, I said out loud, trying to sound braver than I felt. Let's just coexist. I've got work to do. You do your thing, I'll do mine. I turned on every light in the building, every single one, made the place as bright as possible, turned up the studio monitors so I had music playing, Nat King Cole, something soothing. But it didn't help. The feeling got worse. By 10:30, I was genuinely unnerved. The sensation of being watched was overwhelming. I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see something crouched in the corner, but there was never anything there. Then Studio B's lights started strobing. On, off, rapid, erratic. "Jimmy," I called out, "is that you?" The lights kept strobing. That's when I knew. This wasn't Jimmy. Jimmy was predictable. This was chaos. At 10:45, I heard the dot matrix printer in the sales office start up. That printer was old, loud, and temperamental. It only turned on when someone physically pressed the power button. And the sales office was locked. I didn't have a key. But I could hear it through the door. The mechanical whirring, the sound of the printhead moving across paper. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "Okay, stay calm. It's just malfunctioning." Then the ceiling tiles started moving. One by one, starting from the studio where I was sitting, moving down the hallway toward the front door. Thump. A tile lifted an inch, like something had pushed it from above, then dropped back into place. Thump. The next tile. Thump, 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 moving steadily, deliberately away from me. I was frozen in my chair, watching this impossible thing happen. The sequence of thumping tiles reached the front door. And then the front door opened.
Not unlocked. Not jiggled. It just opened. The deadbolt still engaged, the door still technically locked, but swinging inward as if someone had walked through it. My rational mind screamed, doors don't do that. Locked doors don't just open. But I just watched it happen. I stood on shaking legs and walked down the hallway toward the open door. Every instinct told me to run, to grab my keys and leave, but I couldn't let the building sit open all night. As I got closer, I saw something on the front stoop. A coffee cup, white ceramic, steam rising from it, and next to it, a lit cigar, still smoking. I stared at these objects. They hadn't been there when Linda and the salesperson left. I would have seen them. The stoop was empty an hour ago. "What the fuck?" I whispered. I reached out, grabbed the door handle, pulled it closed, and re-engaged the deadbolt. Through the door's window, I could still see the coffee and cigar sitting there, impossibly. I turned back toward the studio and walked directly into a cloud of cigar smoke. Thick, pungent, unmistakable, like I'd walked through an invisible person actively smoking. But there was no one there. The smell clung to me, filled my nostrils, made my eyes water. That was it. I was done. Forget the dishes, forget pulling commercials, forget everything. I went back to the studio, shut down the board without following proper sign-off procedure, grabbed my car keys and jacket, and ran for the front door. I unlocked it, stepped outside into the cold October night, slammed it shut behind me, and ran to my car. As I backed up, headlights illuminating the building, I looked through the front door's window, and I saw a figure, standing in the hallway, backlit by that yellow transmitter light. A man, tall, solid, not a shadow, a silhouette of an actual person, watching me leave. I threw the car into drive and peeled out, gravel spraying behind me, and didn't stop until I was back on Route 421, 8 miles away. I got home around 11:30 p.m. My mom was still up, watching the late news in the living room. "You're home early," she said. I must have looked terrible, because her expression immediately shifted to concern. What happened? I told her everything. The lights, the printer, the ceiling tiles, the door, the coffee and cigar, the smoke, the figure. She listened quietly, then said, "Well, that's something. But you're home now, safe. Maybe just go to bed, honey. You'll feel better in the morning." "Yeah," I said, though I didn't believe it. "Yeah, okay." I went to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat at my desk. I needed to decompress, needed to talk to someone who might understand. In 1995, we didn't have social media or group chats. We had BBSs, bulletin board systems. You'd dial into a server using your modem, and you could post messages, play text-based games, chat with other users. I had a standing connection to a BBS run by a guy in Lexington. A lot of creative types used it, writers, artists, other radio people. I fired up my computer, launched my terminal program, and dialed in. The modem speaker made those familiar sounds, the screeching, crackling negotiation as it connected. Then, once the connection was established, the speaker turned off. That's how modems worked. Speaker on during dial-up, speaker off once connected. I started typing up what had happened, just stream of consciousness, getting it all out. I was maybe 3 paragraphs in when the modem speaker turned back on. That shouldn't happen.
Once a connection is made, the speaker stays off. Even if someone picks up a phone in the house, which would normally kill the connection, the speaker wouldn't turn back on. You'd just get garbled data on screen and a disconnect message. But the speaker turned on, and I heard a voice. With the static hiss of the data connection, distorted and wrong, came a sound that made my blood turn to ice. Help me! Not a voice, a scream, stretched out, screeching, desperate. Then the speaker clicked off. My screen was unchanged, connection still active, no error messages. Just that voice, that terrible, impossible voice. I sat frozen, staring at the modem. My door was closed. My mom was in the living room. There was no one else in the house. And even if there was, even if this was somehow a prank, there was no way to make a modem speaker turn on mid-connection. It was physically impossible. But I'd heard it, clear as day. Help me! I disconnected immediately, powered down the computer, and sat in the dark. My hands were shaking. That voice, that scream, it had followed me home. I worked at WKRX for another 6 months after that night. I needed the money. I needed the experience for my resume. But I changed my schedule, switched to the morning show, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Never alone in the building, always sunlight streaming through the windows. I never worked nights there again. I never told Linda or Donna about the modem. I don't know why. Maybe because it sounded too insane. Maybe because I didn't want them to look at me like I'd lost my mind. But I asked around, carefully, casually. Hey, has anyone ever had weird experiences here? Besides Jimmy, I mean. Blank stares. Confusion. What do you mean? Like something smaller? More aggressive? Nothing. No one knew what I was talking about. Jimmy was beloved. Jimmy was the station mascot. Jimmy was friendly. But the other thing, the shin-high shadow, the malevolent presence, apparently I was the only one who'd ever encountered it. I left WKRX in 1996 when I got a better job at a station in Lexington. Moved away, built a career, got married, had kids, lived a normal life. But every few years, when I'd go back to Harlan to visit my mom, I'd stop by the station. The building's still there, still operational, still that same beige aluminum siding, that same 500-foot antenna blinking red. And Jimmy's still there, too. I've talked to current staff over the years. They all know about Jimmy. They all have stories. Lights flickering, shadows in the hallway, the reel-to-reel starting on its own. He's part of the station's lore now, part of its charm. But when I ask, carefully, indirectly, if anyone's ever experienced anything else, anything darker, no one has. Just me. I'm 52 years old now. It's been nearly 30 years since that October night, and I still can't explain what happened. I've tried. Believe me, I've tried. The ceiling tiles? Maybe rodents in the crawl space. Maybe air pressure changes. The door? Maybe a faulty lock. Maybe I didn't actually engage the deadbolt properly. The coffee and cigar? Maybe someone was playing an elaborate prank. Maybe they snuck in somehow, though I still don't know how. The smoke? Maybe residual smell from Linda's constant smoking, caught in my jacket and released when I turned suddenly. The figure? Maybe a trick of the light. Maybe my panicked brain creating shapes from shadows. I can explain away every single thing that happened in that building. But the modem? I can't explain the modem. There is no rational explanation for a modem speaker turning on mid-connection. There is no way for a voice, any voice, to come through that speaker while data is being transmitted. And there is absolutely no way for that voice to say what it said. Help me! Who was asking for help? Was it the thing from the station? Had it followed me home through the telephone line? Was it something else entirely? Something that had been waiting, dormant in the phone system itself? Or, and this is the possibility that terrifies me most, was it someone who had been trapped? Someone trying to reach out? Someone who saw me as their only chance for escape? If that's true, I abandoned them. I disconnected, powered down, ran away. And whoever it was, they're still there, still trapped, still screaming into the void. I've done research over the years. Late-night Google searches when I can't sleep, forums, paranormal investigation sites. And I've found others, people who've had similar experiences. Voices through electronics, phones, radios, computers. There's a theory, and it's just a theory, that electromagnetic fields can act as a medium for paranormal activity, that entities, whatever they are, can manipulate electrical signals, radio waves, phone lines, data connections. If that's true, then WKRX was the perfect environment. A building dedicated to broadcasting signals, transmitting information through the air, a hub of electromagnetic energy. And if that thing, that shin-high malevolent shadow, could manipulate that energy, then it could follow those signals, travel through them, use them to reach beyond the building's walls. The phone line I used that night, it was connected to the same telephone pole that serviced the radio station. The same lines, the same system. Maybe it didn't follow me. Maybe it just went home first. Waited for me to connect, and then tried to tell me something I wasn't ready to hear. I'm telling you this story not because I want sympathy, not because I need validation. I'm telling you because I need someone to know. Because every time I hear about paranormal experiences, ghosts, hauntings, unexplained phenomena, people always say the same thing. Why didn't you record it? Why didn't you document it? And the answer is, because when it's happening, you're not thinking about evidence. You're not thinking about proof. You're thinking about survival. You're thinking about getting away. And by the time you're safe, by the time your hands stop shaking and your heart stops pounding, the moment has passed. The opportunity is gone. All you're left with is memory, and a question you'll never be able to answer. I drive past WKRX sometimes, late at night when I'm visiting my mom. That yellow light in the transmitter room is still burning. Jimmy's still there, still watching over the station he built. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes, when I drive past at night, I see a shadow near the building, small, shin-high, and I wonder if it's still there too, still waiting, still looking for someone to hear it, someone to help. And I wonder if 30 years ago, I was that someone, and I ran anyway. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. I know this story sounds impossible. I know you're probably skeptical. You should be. I'm skeptical too. But it happened. And I need to know, has anyone else experienced something like this? voices through technology that shouldn't be possible, phone calls from empty lines, data connections that transmitted more than just information? Please, if you have a story like this, share it in the comments. Because for 30 years, I've felt alone in this, and maybe, just maybe, I'm not. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. I share true horror stories, real encounters with the unexplained, and experiences that defy rational explanation. And if you work in radio or have ever worked overnight shifts alone in isolated buildings, be careful. Pay attention to the small things, the shadows at the corner of your vision, the sounds that don't quite fit. Because sometimes those things aren't just in your imagination. Sometimes they're real.